So that's the core message that Jesus is praying with us from the Gospel of John, that we are to be those trees of love. Now, the Gospel of John, he does like the words, doesn't he? It seems like in the past few weeks we've been reading his last words to his disciples, and it seems like it because it's true. We've been going in this journey, this circular journey with the same message over and over, different aspects, deeper and deeper into what it means to be the nature of God's love in the world. It started with the vine, that we are all interconnected. And then it went on to talk about how love, if we share love, it's part of that divine nature of God, and that interconnectedness and that love brings forth that life. And today, we skip over this whole chapter, this whole section on how the world rejects the sense of love and God loving people, which would be really important to John's community as they were kicked out of the synagogue, and maybe for us, where religion is often connected with hate, and sometimes we are outright rejected in that understanding. But Jesus concludes this prayer today, and just like the disciples, we get to hear it, how Jesus prays for us today. That if we remember and abide in that love and that interconnectedness, we will find a joy that a joy for a part of our heart that the world cannot give. And that is the nature of God's love in this world. That's the nature of who we are called to know, to seek, to be. And so, here you are, in God's love in this interconnected, abiding world. Look for that love. Be that love. Be and know that part of joy for others. In the season of graduation speeches, this is kind of Jesus' last graduation speech to his disciples as he goes out into the world, right? He's giving them the last message before they go out into the world. And it reminded me of arguably the very best graduation speech ever given. And it's called "This is Water" by David Foster Wallace. Now, he was an author, he was a novelist, an essayist, a philosopher, and an English professor. And since his passing, it's been published into a little booklet, a little leaflet. You can find the PDF online. And he starts it out like this. There are two young fish swimming in the ocean. And an older fish comes up and says, "Hey, how's the water?" And the two fish swim along, and they later go, "What's water?" That so much of our life, so much of our adult life, as he's telling these graduates, are the very things we don't talk about. It's the thing that we live and move and have our being in. And as adults, hate to tell you this, it ain't always great. Adulting is hard and boring and frustrating at times, many times. We spend up to 5 years of our lives waiting in line. No. Think about that. 5 years of our lives is waiting in line. Wow. So imagine this, or maybe you live this. You go to a job or you do part of your life that you love your work, what you've prepared yourself for, and it's hard work. It takes a lot of your mental energy. Maybe perhaps your physical energy. And then you realize at the end of this long day that you've been focusing so hard at work that you realize your pantry is empty. And it goes on to say that you have to go to the grocery store after a long, hard day, and all you really want to do is go home, have a nice meal, go to bed, and then get up in the morning and redo the whole thing, right? But you realize you have no food in the pantry, so you jump into the car, and there's terrible traffic because everyone else has realized at the end of a long day that they don't have food either and have jumped into the car. And of course, you go to the grocery store, and everyone else is there in the grocery store, and the lines are long, and the tedium can be awful. Anyone experience this part of life? Raise your hand. Right? That this is the water we live and move much of our life in. And that he argues that education helps you remember that your experience isn't the only experience in this world. You see, ever since we were very, very tiny, we only have our perspective to bounce things off. And as we grow older, we realize there are other people, and they may be in the same room as us, experiencing the same exact sermon, and one person is remembering, oh, grocery store, I don't have any food. What do I need to get at the grocery store? And another person's really into the sermon, and another person's like, oh, look, a bird. All the same experience at the same time. Because we each come, as we learn, as we grow older, we realize that each of us come to these days from a different life. And one of us may have had a beautiful walk in the morning, and another one may have had a terrible call from their parents or their mother or their son or their children worrying them, or whatever it is, right? That education, he argues, and I argue, our faith community helps us remember that we are not the only ones, that the life is shared with others, and that we are called to focus on something larger and bigger than ourselves. And when we do that, we realize we have the choice to focus on what we experience in life. We have the choice to focus on what meaning we make of life. All of us have had those days where it seems like nothing is going right, so we spend the rest of the day looking for all the things that aren't going right, right? Or those days where we have such a beautiful moment that all we can do is look for those beautiful moments in everything else. That is what David Wallace is saying here, and I believe this is what Jesus is saying to his disciples. The world is going to reject you. There will be long lines. You will wait 5 years in line. But how you see that line and how you interact in that line is what changes us from the humdrum of life to being God's disciples. Because we might notice in this line the little girl who's hugging their mom, the person who returns the cart and says, oh, that wheel there, it ain't any good. Pick another cart. The person who lets another person in line. The clerk who's doing her or his very best to make life just a little bit easier for you. And when we see those things, and we choose to focus on those things, as Jesus asks for us, we can dwell in that love and joy and recognize that that line isn't just a tedium of 5 minutes, but a beautiful picture of our humanity and shared experience. Look for the light. That's what it's all about, folks. To look in that light, in the water we live and breathe and have our being in. To notice that love. To lift our faces upward past our own personal experiences into the collective beauty that is humanity. Share that love. Express that joy. And that will fill our hearts and the hearts around us with a joy that the world cannot give. Amen.